On a cold and dark night of March 31st, 1922, something horrifying happened on the Hinterkaifeck farm in Germany. The 6 inhabitants of the farm, including an elderly couple, their daughter, and 2 grandchildren, were brutally murdered. The killer was never identified, and the case remains one of the most perplexing and chilling unsolved mysteries in German history. The gruesome details of the murders, combined with the eerie circumstances surrounding the crime scene, have led many to believe that the farm was cursed or haunted. Even today, over a century later, the Hinterkaifeck farm murders continue to send shivers down the spines of those who dare to delve into the mystery. In Germany, around 70 kilometers, 43 miles north of Munich, there was a farm called Hinterkaifeck. This farm was kind of lonely because the closest neighbor was about a kilometer away. The farm was located in a remote area hidden in the woods. In the farmhouse lived Andreas Gruber, who was 63 years old, Cecilia Gruber, who was 72, and their daughter Victoria Gabriel, who was 35. Victoria had 2 kids, Joseph, who was 2 years old, and Cecilia, who was 7, named after her grandma. A lady named Maria Baumgartner came to Hinterkaifeck farm for her first day of work. She had just been hired as the new live-in maid to replace the previous maid, Cresstens Rieger, who had suddenly quit and left the farm. The family that lived on the farm was not very popular with the locals. According to notes from the church book from 1920, an unknown author describes her as a usurer, envious, and incestuous. According to the author, such a family will be punished by God. The family was probably not so popular because of the wealth they possessed, including holding 17 hectares of land. Before the end of March 1922, several strange occurrences happened in and around Hinterkaifeck. 6 months earlier, Cresstens Rieger, the family maid, suddenly quit. People later said she left because of weird noises from the attic, and that she firmly believed the farmhouse to be haunted. She also later claimed that Andreas Gruber was having an incestuous relationship with and abusing his own daughter Victoria. There seemed to be public knowledge at the time, as there are court documents recording accusations of incest against Andreas and his daughter Victoria. Whether this is the main reason the maid left remains uncertain, but by leaving Hinterkaifeck, she may just have saved her own life. On March 25th, Victoria Gabriel unexpectedly dashed out of the farmhouse. She ran straight into the woods and vanished for a few hours. This was completely out of character for Victoria, as she wouldn't usually behave like this. Additionally, there was still snow on the ground, making it extremely cold at that time. It was also reported that Victoria started complaining to some friends that she was really terrified lately, because she had seen a man dressed in army gear standing at the edge of the farm near where the woods were, just wandering about the Hinterkaifeck farm. Victoria told her friends that as she tried to approach this man to see what he was doing, he just disappeared into the woods. Later, Andreas Gruber noticed that the keys to the house had disappeared and no one knew where. Then, on March 30th, he discovered something strange. He found a Munich newspaper in the attic, which was not available in the region and which no one had ever bought. Andreas thought it was strange and asked everyone in the house about it, but no one knew where it came from. He even interrogated the postman, who had no idea how it ended up there. These events left Andreas unsettled. After the strange incidents, Andreas was restless. He began to wonder if someone had sneaked into the house unnoticed. As he stepped outside, he noticed the shed lock was broken, but nothing is missing inside. After inspecting the shed, Andreas walked to the back of the house and was unsettled to see 2 sets of shoe prints in the snow. These prints led from the woods straight to the Gruber house. What really terrified him was the absence of returning prints. Then, Andreas ran into a neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, and told him about all the strange things that had happened. He thought there might be an intruder on the farm. Lorenz offered him a gun, but Andreas said he wasn't scared and didn't need it. Another neighbor, Casper Stegman, heard the same story from Andreas. After talking to Casper, Andreas headed back home. When he arrived, he found a cow wandering around the barn. Someone had let it out. He got the cow back in the pen, and we don't know what he discussed with his family that night. However, no one was asleep because ghostly footsteps were said to be heard in the attic. Andreas waited until dawn the next day, March 31st, before checking the attic. He found nothing unusual. Shortly after, Maria Baumgartner, the new live-in maid, arrived with her sister Franziska to help her settle in. Franziska stayed for an hour, then headed home. Maria hugged her, showing nervousness about her new place. Sadly, this was the last time anyone saw the family or Maria alive. It was Saturday, April 1st, and two men showed up at Hinterkaifeck farm. Hans and Edward Skirofsky, who were selling coffee, knocked on the door expecting to take an order. However, their calls went unanswered. Trying to get attention with knocks on the window didn't work either. The two men wandered around the yard calling out, but no one appeared. The only strange thing they noticed was the open gate to the machine house. Without any suspicion, they chose to leave. Also, little Cecilia did not show up to school on Saturday, April 1st. The next day, Sunday, April 2nd, the family was not at the church service they regularly attended. On April 4th, local mechanic Albert Hoffner went to Hinterkaifeck to fix a broken saw engine. He saw nobody on the property, not a single family member. All he heard were the noises from the farm animals and the family dog howling inside the barn. The same day, Lauren Schlittenbauer went to the farm with Michael Pohl and Jacob Ziegel. The three went into the barn and discovered the lifeless bodies of Andreas Gruber, his wife Cecilia Gruber, his daughter Victoria Gabriel, and his granddaughter Cecilia. Schlittenbauer then entered the house alone and found the murdered Maria Baumgartner in her room and the youngest member of the family, Joseph. The case was given to Inspector Georg Reingruber and his department, which had the task of investigating the gruesome killings. They examined the bodies, taking note of their positions. The police found jewelry and a higher amount of money at the farm, which ruled out a robbery motive, and identified tracks of unknown origin, which, however, did not create a logical line. Based on the information gathered, the police came up with the theory that they were killed one by one, probably lured by an unknown sound from the area of the barn or backyard. According to the police, the cause could have been the restless behavior of the cows kept inside the barn or the barking of the dog, but also another unknown cause. The investigation revealed that the first victims were definitely Victoria and her mother Cecilia. 7-year-old Cecilia was the last to be lured into the barn and killed. Tests conducted found that a loud scream of a person could not be heard in the house in the maid's room. Deciding to investigate the attic, the police found evidence of potential habitation, including straw on the ground to muffle footsteps, half-eaten food, and human excrement. Upon closer inspection, they discover loose tiles in the attic, providing a vantage point to see everything happening in the house and outside. It is concluded that someone had been living on the farm after the murders. The murders most likely took place on the night of March 31st to April 1st, that is, from Friday to Saturday. Postman Joseph Meyer confirmed to the police that the mail was in the box in the same condition as he left it there on Saturday, April 1st. The police also spoke with people who interacted with the family before the murders, learning about the strange events around the farm and the footsteps in the attic that night. From the testimony of the witness Michael Plokel, there was smoke from the chimney 3 days before the bodies were discovered, so it must have been sunk in a furnace. Plukol even stated that he was walking by that night and someone from the farm shined a flashlight at him, so he did not recognize the person in question. The reaction seemed very strange to him, so he left quickly. On April 6th, after the initial investigation, the police leave and send a medical examiner to continue the examination. The medical examiner, Johann Baptist Aumüller, conducted autopsies on the victims in the barn. He determined that the probable murder weapon was a mattock, an agricultural tool resembling a pickaxe, featuring an adze-like arched blade and a chisel edge at the head's ends. The victims in the barn endured gruesome injuries. The elderly Cecilia Gruber had 8 holes in the right side of her skull, and her daughter Victoria's skull showed 9, a result of repeated blows to the right side of her head. Strangely, strangulation marks were also discovered on Victoria's neck. The young Cecilia Gabriel had a single hole from the mattock on the right side of her face. She endured a shattered jaw, the killer utilizing an iron band hidden in the hayloft to silence her. However, the fatal blow came from a pocket knife used to slit her throat. The young girl, found half naked, pulled out clumps of her own hair in her death pains before succumbing to her wounds. Andreas Gruber's injuries were quite different from those of the rest of his family. He was discovered to have passed away due to falling onto the sharp end of a heavy pickaxe, which was located in the feeding trough for the animals. This injury caused a tear in his carotid artery, leading to rapid bleeding and his death. Right side of his cheek was torn open with the cheekbone sticking out. He only had this single injury. Inside the house, Maria Baumgartner had injuries on the right side of her head and face, succumbing to at least 1 blow on the top of her skull. Young Joseph Gabriel was fatally struck on the right side of his skull, the force of the blow causing his demise while still wearing his bassinet. Despite an initial property search, the actual weapon was not found at the crime scene. The first and main suspect was the neighbor Lorenz Schlittenbauer, who was allegedly in love with Victoria and wanted her to become his wife, but she rejected him. According to witnesses, Lorenz Schlittenbauer accepted the discovery of the bodies with icy calmness and also manipulated them. Another indication that he might be the killer was the violent reaction of the dog, which barked loudly at him and showed signs of severe stress in his presence. He also had a tremendous knowledge of the farm, as if he lived there himself. For example, on the inside of the front door, he immediately found a hidden mechanism to open it. Inspector Reingruber and his team were investigating the case as a murder of passion, and Lorenz's profile fit the bill. Schlittenbauer faced local suspicion for years, but was never proven guilty, and the police removed him from the suspect list. Carl Gabriel, the widowed Victoria Gabriel's husband, was initially suspected, despite reports of his death in World War I. The fact that his body was never found led to this claim, but this was nothing extraordinary in the First World War. Rumors circulated about the incestuous relationship between Victoria and her father Andreas, leading to the birth of their son Joseph. After World War II, German captives claimed a German-speaking Soviet officer, possibly Karl, admitted to being the Hinterkaifeck murderer. Unfortunately, in the end, no connection with the murders was proven in this case. Josef Bartel was also on the list of suspects, an insane baker who escaped from a mental hospital in 1921, where he was hospitalized for his involvement in a murder in 1919. Some witnesses confirmed on the basis of a photograph that he was the one they saw in the area at the end of March. However, no further evidence of his involvement in the Hinterkaifeck murders was ever found. During the investigation, the police even hired a psychic to whom they lent the skulls of the victims and offered a reward of 100,000 marks for information that would lead to the arrest of the perpetrator. Unfortunately, without success. Nowadays, the Hinterkaifeck farm no longer exists. After the murders and the subsequent investigation, it was demolished in 1923, leaving only a monument in its place. The crime was never solved, and no one was convicted.